There we go. Welcome to the Women's March Canada podcast, making the equality of women in Canada the new norm. This is episode 8, and it's a special episode because we are shining the light on our executive director. My name is Melissa Durrell, and I'm your host, inspiring, uniting, and leading the charge for the advancement of women across Canada. Please give a warm welcome to this week's guest, Sara Bingham. It's so nice to have you. We've often chatted off screen, so it's cool to have you on screen. Now, Sarah's the Executive Director of Women's March Canada. She's also the founder of We Hands and the author of a baby signing book. Sarah's strong background in language and development and communications makes her a tremendous community leader and a digital marketing superstar. We're lucky to have her on our team here at Women's March Canada. Now, Sara, tell us a little bit about how you got started in Women's March Canada.
Oh my gosh. It's funny, I described myself up until about January 21st, 2017 as a speech therapist. Mm-hmm. And my background is in working with kids with special needs. And, but I am a biracial Jamaican Scottish background woman. And, as soon as the election happened, when we all crashed, after that day in November 2016, my goodness, I was depressed like the rest of the world probably. And I saw on my Facebook feed, a woman, a stranger to me at the time, was posting information about a bus traveling from Toronto to Washington when the march was announced. And I said, I don't even know this woman, but I really need to go to Washington for this march. And the reason I needed to go was I knew as a biracial woman that women and individuals and men and people had marched on Washington beforehand for me. So I had to go. And so my hand hovered over my mouse, and I sent money to Tracy Aaron Smith, who launched the Solo Mobile trip down to Washington. She was a stranger at the time. She's a friend now. And I got on the bus with her, and it was funny. I've always worked with kids with special needs. Baby sign language and children's language development was my thing, and it still is my thing. And entrepreneurship definitely is my thing. One of the very first interviews I did with CTV right before the march, they said, "How do you want your title to read on the screen?" And I'm like, I don't know. I've always been Sara Bingham, founder of We Hands and author of the baby signing book, and I just hesitated. And she said, "Activist. I think you're an activist." And people have since asked me, when did you become an activist? And it was when that CTV reporter gave me the label. And I went and I marched, and it was an incredible weekend. And months later, individuals who had organized the original march all across Canada, all of the marches across Canada, they were looking for help. And I am an entrepreneur. I do know how to organize organizations to a degree. And so I put my hand up, and I've been with Women's March ever since, and trying to drive this interesting bus that we're on. And it's been an exciting, if not frustrating, year.
Well, I would say it's interesting. This journey started with the bus, and now we have Canadian women across this country that are on it. And we're marching again, aren't we?
We are marching again. January 20th, we're marching across Canada. I know Women's March Global, there's chapters around the world that are marching. We're marching from the Magdalen Islands, Ottawa, Kitchener, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. Wyerton, Ontario is marching. They did not march last year. So every day we open up our email, and we've got more and more cities across Canada jumping on board.
Now, it's interesting because we are Canada, and America is our, I guess, cousin, sibling, whatever you want to say. We've got a pretty progressive government here. Not to say that we don't have issues here in Canada. We 100% do. And actually, that's one of the things that we explore on this podcast are some of the issues that we're dealing with. Yeah. But, nothing, like the Trump effect here is nothing is, we're not dealing with the same issues as America. And a shout out to Alabama right now, because I think we need to do yay, Alabama.
Yes.
Yeah, we all have bags under our eyes from watching too late.
Watching those Twitter feeds, yes.
So what do you think is uniting Canadian women?
Oh my gosh, that's a huge question. I think there's a drive that it could, I mean, when we were going down to Washington, we had to very safely, and we were coached not to say that we were not going to protest Trump. We were going to support our sisters to the south of us.
Right.
And I think what unites us is the desire to do things better. All across Canada, we've seen it, that people are working towards better childcare, better healthcare. And we've seen to the south of us that things can happen that we never thought would happen. I think the majority of the world went to bed thinking, oh, of course she's going to win.
Right.
But it turned out not to be the case. We do talk about Alabama, but that was a close election. It was less than 10,000 votes that won in the right direction, and the majority of white men and white women voted in a way that I think is surprising. So it's
shocking. Actually, I'll edit that. It was shocking.
It's shocking that it was that close. So how is this happening, and how are these issues coming up? It's something that we absolutely need to explore. There's no way I'm going to say I have answers to any of it, but one of the things that we are doing, and we are just a drop in the bucket of people advocating across Canada and around the world, we can help tell women's stories. And I think for the longest time, our stories have not been told. And I one of the things that when I see a video or a recording has been done with all your hard, amazing work, Melissa, I love seeing these stories come out. And we need to celebrate Canadian women more and more. And this is one little way that Women's March Canada can do that, along with so many other amazing organizations across the country.
Do you think, as women in Canada, I always think of the murdered and missing, or missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I think women across this country, we've spoken about it, but we've never, I don't know if we leaned into it the way we should have leaned into it. And I think that
good terminology there. Right.
I think there's something really interesting about the fact, like, Women's March Canada is really backing Indigenous women. And I think there's something really special about that, and hopefully empowering for Indigenous women in this country. And so what are some of the things that we're doing around that?
We talk about this as a board, and we are really backing Indigenous women. I don't think we're doing enough. I don't think we're reaching the Indigenous women that are leaders in their community. We need to do more, and we need to tell more of their stories. We need to be able to give a voice to women who don't have a voice, and give a strong voice to those women who are leaders, who are going to move us forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this leadership idea, because to me, that was one of the most important things about having a Women's March Canada, right? Like, so, we can support Women's March in America, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm, as you know, I went to the conference, I drank the Kool-Aid. It's a phenomenal movement. But I'm not American, and I don't have for the most part, the same values, and I didn't grow up in that same society. So when I come back across the border, which is really easy to do when you're just jumping across from Detroit, I come back here, and, it's really easy to get into our bubble. And so I think one of the things that's so important about Women's March Canada is I'm hoping that we're popping that bubble a little bit, and poking at things that, you agree?
What do you see as the bubble here in Canada?
Just this idea that Trump could never happen here. I hear that a lot from a lot of women, and you just gave me that look, Sarah, and you're right. So let's talk about that a bit.
How do we know? What are we doing to make sure that the Trump effect doesn't happen here? And even though we talk about the Trump effect, there are still things happening here in Canada that are not benefiting women. I mean, we look at pay equity, we look at the price of childcare across Canada. It's crazy. We look at women in tech. We look at the abuse that is happening here in Canada. I mean, missing and murdered women is definitely should be the highest priority. There's so much going on that we can't sit and be comfortable and say Trump would never happen here. Mm-hmm. Because in October 2016, we thought Trump would never happen in the US, and it's happened. So one of the wonderful things about Women's March overall, whether it's Women's March US, Women's March Canada, Women's March Switzerland, Australia, we are all connected and we can all support each other. What effect we're going to have is, I mean, we're still very grassroots. Everybody who I know in Women's March Canada and Women's March Global is doing this as a volunteer. And I've met some incredibly fierce women that are living around the world holding this Women's March banner. We just have to keep working and keep identifying the problems in our community. We can't think of, oh my gosh, the whole Me Too thing, how are we going to fix it? But we can look at how we're going to fix it in your community and get out the door, help people, help women run municipally, federally, provincially, help people become better leaders at work. And there's one of the things that we talk about with Women's March is we want to inspire, lead, and unite women across Canada and act as a hub for all of these incredible organizations that are already out there. And because we are getting a certain light shone on us because of Women's March, and unfortunately because of Trump, we can work with Oxfam Canada, we can work with CARE Canada, we can work with YWCA Canada, which is one of the oldest organizations, and move all of our agendas forward, which are just going to be beneficial for all women and men and children across the country.
You know, we talk a lot about feminism and you know, is this
the word of the year?
Yeah, fourth wave or something like that, right? Because I think it's really interesting. I think, you know, you can see across the globe, there was a real push for women to get the vote. I mean, that was a big thing at the beginning of the 19th century, right? Or 1900s,
yeah,
20th century. And really, I mean, things have changed and shifted, and women are in the workforce now. But I mean, I'm only in my 40s here, but I've never experienced such a global awakening when it comes to women. And, you know, I have to believe that Women's March is part of that awakening. That
I really think, and I've worked with kids with special needs for my entire career for the last 20, 25, 26 years. I'm older than you. And I've worked with kids with special needs, little ones with autism, little ones with Down syndrome, who literally had no voice. And that was my job, to help them to communicate in whichever way they were going to communicate, using speech, pictures, or sign language. And I was helping them find their voice. And when I looked back, when I was at the march in Washington, and it really wasn't a march, it was more of a trudge, because there were just so many people there, we could not walk. And I remember posting on Facebook when I got a little bit of bandwidth when I was down in Washington, and I said, can somebody tell me how many people are here? So whoever's watching CNN, tell us the numbers, because we have no idea, because we're in it. Yeah. And I got some messages back from my friends regarding the numbers, and it was when I came back and you could just see that picture with hundreds of thousands of women, that sea of pink. Yeah. And I had to, in my head, I went back to advocating for little ones who have no voice. And what the march did was showed the world that we showed up, and we absolutely had no voice. It was the biggest gathering. It was the biggest gathering of people, the biggest gathering of buses mobilizing across North America. We set records that day, and that we could visually see that sea of pink. Mm-hmm. With all of those pussy hats. I did not have one because the hair did not go well with the pussy hat, but I loved it because it was so visually pink, and you knew it was the Women's March, and there were thousands, millions of people marching around the world, and that showed that we have a voice. Yeah. And when I can be a shy person and I can see the next person speaking up, that bolsters me up, and says, oh, I can use my voice. And when we connect with other women, I've for the past 3 years, I've led a lean in group And when women gather together and we learn about each other, and again, we hear each other's stories, I'm going to preach that one, we kind of straighten up and we said, okay, I can do this because I know Melissa did it. And I have to do this, and I have to use my voice because I know Anna's going to kick my butt if I don't negotiate my salary. I know Kat's going to also kick my butt if I don't get to the gym when I have set my goal of I want to get to the gym. So gathering a group behind you of strong women makes you stronger yourself. And that's what I think happened with the march. We visually saw it. And then all of this, I'm going to say crap, started evolving, and we started getting stronger when that first Me Too tweet went out, and you saw everyone else saying, well, it's okay for me to say it too, because me too. And when we hear our stories, when we use our voices, we are models for other people using our voices, and it's just going to snowball.
I love it. I want to talk about hers, because some people might not be familiar with some of the things that we're really trying to push across Women's March Canada. So talk to me about age is health. So what does that mean?
Yes. So the HERS model is something that has been put forward globally for Women's March chapters, and we're really modeling what we do on this HERS model, HERS. H stands for health, women's health. E is economic security, so looking at pay equity, getting more women in business. Representation is more women on boards, more women in parliament. We know that, well, we don't know. The UN has this theory that once we get 30% more women on municipal boards, provincial boards, more in government, that there's going to be a tipping point, and more women's issues are going to be looked at. So R is representation in politics, and S is safety. And Me Too feeds into all we've been talking about regarding women's safety.
So here's an interesting story, without naming names, but I'm on another board, and they were planning an event, and it was several men that were planning this event, and I was coming in just to give some advice on the comms, and the day that they chose was International Women's Day. And so as soon as I saw the date, I was like, this is International Women's Day. But of course, it's not a day that would even, the men would even notice, right? Or maybe some do, but it wasn't in their calendars or whatever. So I said, you can't do an event like this on International Women's Day. This is our day. This is the one day. But it was interesting because it just shows you when you have women on boards or women in positions where, otherwise this event would have rolled out, and it's not an appropriate event for that day. It has nothing to do with women. And and I remember it made me think about, I think it was a car manufacturer, and they were putting in, what is it? The pillows, so that when you hit the pillows yes. Do you remember this story?
No, I don't.
Airbags. Yeah. And they only tested on a dummy that was shaped like a man. And so all of a sudden women started getting massively injured when the airbags were going off. And it's because they didn't have a woman on the team. Now this would have been 40, 50 years ago, but they didn't have a woman on the team. And so they never tested on a woman's body, and the way the airbags were deploying, it was injuring. And I think there was even a woman that was killed in it. So it just shows you like how important even having one, 30%, I 100% believe 50% all the way, but just having those voices and how quickly things can, things can change. So, I love the representation. Now we've got one more, S.
Safety.
Yeah.
Just safety, violence. Me Too has shown us that we've got to have a discussion. There's things that have to be done. And looking at, I went to a Me Too discussion a couple of days after it started rolling out, and I remember it was in our downtown, and I remember parking, not in a parking lot that was kind of behind buildings in our downtown. I parked on the main street, And because that's the energy that we use, we have to be aware of what we're doing safely.
Yep.
And one of my coworkers attended this presentation with me, and I'm 5'10", she's 5'2", and this petite little thing, and she had parked in this parking lot that was darker, and there was a little bit of a bar, and it just worried me. And we have to think about other people. I love the discussion that you talked about. You talked about diversity. We have to have more people at the table discussing things so that we make sure everybody's voice is heard. And perhaps a lot of men wouldn't think of, okay, I have to be aware of where I park. I have to make sure my keys are between my fingers.
Right.
I have to know where the lights are. We have to have everybody at the table discussing these issues because everyone has privilege. I have privilege in this walking situation because I'm 5'10". I'm a bigger person than my coworker who's 5'2". We have to have everybody at the table talking. You reminded me of a story as well when some of the first facial recognition software came out.
Yes.
The teams were only men and white men. And so when you tried to use this facial recognition software with people of color, it failed miserably. And that it's just so stupid telling that story now. But we have to have more people at the table, and we have to also take a step back and recognize where our privilege is. I have certain privileges because I'm tall. You have certain privileges because you're white, and we have to recognize where our privileges are, and at times take a step back and let other people in. And there's so many discussions around all of the HERS, health, economic security, representation, and safety. We have to look at things with a different lens. And get our teams as diverse as possible so that we can do things better.
Yeah, 100% agree. So, we have viewers from across the country, and they might not all necessarily have a Women's March chapter within their communities. So what do you recommend? How can they get involved with this and stay involved? Because this isn't just one march. This is a movement.
It's not. And when we're looking at how change happens, it is activism, it is marching, it is movements, but it is also looking at the institutions that are already in your community, whether it's domestic violence centers or how many people are on actual boards, on school boards, who's running for local politics, how things are happening within your organizations, within your companies. Are things being moved forward, and are these discussions being had?
Awesome. And you actually, I get to do this job by hosting the podcast, but you get to do the Twitter cast. So talk to me a little bit about what that looks like.
So we have Twitter chats once a week, and they are looking at the HERS model. So we rotate every week looking at health or economic security or representation or safety. That's a topic, and we partner with other organizations across the country, which is fascinating to me, and I've learned so much. There's so many incredible organizations out there that we've been able to partner with. And we just have a discussion. We continue this story and continue the discussion and the conversation about whatever topic we're looking at each week. It may be something that's coming into the news, or it may be just typically following the HERS rotation of discussion topics. And we've got people chatting with us from around the world, and we do use the hashtag Women's March. So that anybody can join in. We are talking typically about Canadian things, but anybody can benefit. And one of the individuals we had is a Canadian living in Taiwan.
Cool.
And we're able to join our conversation. So it's wonderful that we can reach the country and people around the world.
So if people want to participate, give it a promo here.
We are, you can find us on Twitter. We are, what is our handle? Women's March CDA. I know you say it every time.
Yeah, Women's March CDA.
Sorry, you check. And just look for the hashtag Women's March, and you can see our conversations there. We have womensmarchcanada.com is our website. So all of our events, all of our Twitter chats, all of the marches that are coming up, more events that we're talking about with other organizations will be on our website as well. And we really want the website to be one place for if you have, you're looking for local women focused community events. You can go to our website, whether it's a group that are holding a Zumbathon and raising money for the local women's shelters. You can find it there, or all of our marches are going to be listed on our website as well.
So we're also looking for donations, and so we're asking the kind people of Canada that this is a worthy cause for obvious reasons, the HERS model, but also moving towards equality, which is something we really need to focus on in this country at this time. And so as we look for donations, I mean, for people who are considering it, it is Christmas time, a time of giving. That's one of the things that I've asked this Christmas is for people to donate to this organization.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Strongly in it. Yeah. Well, it's right? So, where's this money going to, and how is it helping Canadians?
The money is going to right now just the basic operations of what we're doing. Everybody involved, from our board, our executive directors, our social media manager, our content manager, is volunteer, 100% volunteer. And so money that we are bringing in, and we do have people donating one-time donations, or we've got a handful of people who are donating recurring things every month. We get a little smidge, and we're grateful for that. It's going to maintaining our website, whatever small social media tools that we have, and we're hoping to develop more programs as we get more people donating, and just any way that we can help. We want to be able to do this and push out the stories that we're sharing.
Good. Anything else you want to add today?
I just want to thank you for, we talk about volunteers. You are one of the volunteers who are behind this, and your expertise and your smile is I'm so grateful for it.
This is one of my favorite things that I get to do. So I want to thank you. It's been awesome. Someone was asking me the other day about it. They saw the Carla Ciccone interview, and
so good.
She's so great, such a great person to chat with. I was saying it's interesting to me because I don't know if I've told this story before, so if I have, I'm sorry, but I was driving my daughter and her bestie home from ballet one night, and we'd just been talking about doing the podcast, and I said, so what women do you look up to? And my daughter, of course, she's my daughter, so it was Hillary Clinton, and then her little friend was like Beyonce, and I thought, well, two really interesting women, but neither of them are Canadian. And, you look around and we're just not spotlighting Canadian women or people that are doing incredible things in our country. And so, that's one of the things I really hope happens with this podcast. And so I thank everybody who watches and subscribes.
And so that's an ask that we can put out there. If we know there are inspiring women in your lives as Canadians, so please comment and share and tag those women. Let us know who to feature. We're hunting for them, and we're searching for them. So
we want to tell their stories.
Yes. And I love. I'll put it out there that your idea we're going to be interviewing every organizer for any of the marches that are happening across Canada. So I'm so excited.
Yes, stay tuned
to learn them because I'm in touch with many of them, and they are women that are kicking ass in their communities, and we want to tell their stories.
Well, Sarah, you're amazing. And, as a volunteer, what you do for women across this country is awesome. I'm always loving your T-shirts. Sarah has awesome T-shirts. I don't
have one on today.
You don't? So it's like the T-shirt is female, fierce and female. Like I always love looking at you on Facebook because I'm like, yeah. So thank you for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
I appreciate this opportunity that you've given to me here. So that's our guest, Sara Bingham. And thanks to everybody that's tuned in to listen. Your comments are welcome and encouraged. So please subscribe to Women's March Canada channel, and you'll receive updates every time we upload a new podcast, which is usually around on the weekends. Sara, you can say this with me. Our mission across Canada is to stand together in solidarity with our partners and children for the protection of our rights, our safety, our health, and our families, recognizing that our vibrant and diverse communities are the strength of our country. This is the Women's March Canada podcast, and you can find us on Twitter at Women's March CDA and on our website at www.womensmarchcanada.com. I'm Melissa Durrell. Have a great day.